In Rise of Kingdoms, one of the most important things for any account is your legendary commanders. There are almost 100 in the game, and choosing which ones to invest in is one of the biggest decisions you can ever make. So today I'm going to show you the best legendary investments from the very early game to set yourself up for the end game. So if you're a free-to-play low spender, looking to choose the right commanders to invest in from KVK 1 up until Season of Conquest, you want to stick around till the end of the video. Now let's quickly go over how today's video is really going to work, since it's a bit different from guides that I have done before, and it is still fairly simple to follow. First of all, I'm going to discuss most of the legendary commanders that you'll get access to in the really early game, and I'll tell you which ones are good, which ones you can skip, and which ones have some uses but are not the best investment. Other than that, I will also tell you which ways you can build a lot of these really early game commanders into some form of a Season of Conquest march. If you don't know what Season of Conquest is, it is the end game of KVK. It is the pretty much final stage where you're just constantly fighting, and you'll be investing in absolute meta stuff. But until then, you don't have access to all these shiny commanders, which I'm showing you now, and you're missing out on a lot of these stronger commanders just because you do have to wait a little while to actually unlock them. But with that format out of the way and that small explanation, let's get into the guide. So to start off with our guide today, I'm going to start off by discussing the museum, since this is going to play a very crucial role in the commanders that I do look at today. There are a lot of commanders in Rise of Kingdoms, and a lot of the early game commanders are available in the museum. The museum is literally a way to buff older commanders who may not be as good. So some of these commanders here, or pretty much all of them, without their museum upgrades, would be pretty rubbish if we're being fully honest. But since these commanders have some form of a museum upgrade, a lot of them do become a lot stronger, and I will be considering this when I look at building a murder ball today. Some of these commanders are not as strong as they used to be, but a lot of these museum relics still do help these commanders become very usable, and you'll notice that I will be discussing museum throughout today's video when I'm discussing a lot of the commanders. Now, to begin with, when it comes to your legendary commanders, these are the first commanders you'll ever see in Rise of Kingdoms. I've got them all on screen now. These are the commanders you will see when you first ever open up the game, because these are all the initial starting commanders you will have access to. All of these commanders you can get in the start of the game. You could technically spend a ridiculous amount of money and max them out, but you just won't get access to some of the later commanders. And these initial commanders, there are 3 different types. The main type you've got are your gold key commanders. These commanders are available inside of your tavern through the golden chest. These golden chests will give you access to these legendary commanders by giving you their commander sculptures, or just directly giving you the commander themselves. But all these commanders are very easy to access. They're quite literally free, and you don't really have to spend much to get them. The other type of commander you will see are VIP commanders. These commanders come from spending money. That is the only way to get them. So these 2 commanders are Minamoto, and you've also got Hannibal Barker, who comes at VIP level 10. And that's the only way you can max out these commanders, or even unlock them, is through that VIP shop. And I guess with Minamoto, for your first ever purchase, you do get access to him, just unlocked. You don't get expertise, it is only 10 commander sculptures, but do keep that in mind. These are those 2 commanders specifically only available through spending money. The final type of commander is going to be Ethelfled, and she is accessed through your expedition, which you will unlock a little bit later into the game. As you can see, I don't have it just yet. That's because I'm pretty sure it comes at like City Hall 5 or something, and that is when you'll get access to Ethelfled, and she is once again not a pay-to-win commander, but she's a literal free commander. You can't use legendary commander sculptures on her, and the only way to level her up is by doing the expedition and getting her sculptures from the shop there, so you can upgrade her skills. So those are the 3 types of commanders you will have access to in the earliest stages of the game, and you really shouldn't invest in most of them. Any gold key commanders, in my opinion, they're not worth putting any gold heads in. You want to save those gold heads for later stages of the game, just because that makes the most sense. So if you're looking to get gold key commanders, I would only focus on getting them out of the golden chests. I would never ever use your legendary commander sculptures on a golden key commander because those commanders are going to be much higher value and you shouldn't be using your generic sculptures on them. There are some exceptions if you're looking to get some really early game investment. You can put a few into Charles Martel, he is not bad. You can put a few into Thutmose or a couple into Pyrus. Those are the only 3 commanders I would recommend in the earlier stages of the game that if you really wanted to, you could put some sculptures in them and it wouldn't be the end of the world. But I wouldn't recommend, once again, investing in any commander available in the gold chest. If you don't know where they're available, you can just push this plus and it will tell you they're available in the tavern, which means you can get them in the golden chest. So any commanders, whenever you push this plus, if it says open chest in the tavern, I would not put any generic sculptures in them and I would just try and level them up for literal free. Also, do keep in mind some of these commanders become available in the Mightiest Governor or in the Wheel of Fortune at some point, which are 2 events to get commander sculptures. I would not spin the Wheel of Fortune for commanders that are available in the gold chest. So for example, Julius Caesar, who has a Mightiest Governor, I would not be spending any of my actual resources to try and get him. I don't think he is worth it. You would rather just get him from the gold chest, especially because he is not that amazing and he's going to be the first commander that comes in the Mightiest Governor. So I would not be spending to get him in the Mightiest Governor. I would not spin the Wheel of Fortune for him. For example, Cao Cao is the first commander who comes to the Wheel of Fortune. Therefore, I just wouldn't spend my gems on him. So make sure you're not getting these commanders with your gems or your generic sculptures and save them for much later. In terms of the VIP commanders, they're only from spending money. And in a general rule of thumb, they're about $300 to expertise. I'm pretty sure it is in US dollars. So they're not cheap, but they're relatively cheap compared to most commanders. I mean, if you want to expertise a normal commander through spending money, it's probably around $500-600. But Minamoto and Hannibal Barca both cost $300 to expertise. In my opinion, maxing out Hannibal Barca is a waste of time. Pretty much every single endgame player will agree. He is completely useless. But Minamoto is the commander that if you do want to spend money, he is the one that you would max. And if you want to get him, like I said, through the VIP shop up until level 9, once you get VIP level 9, you can officially expertise him. But he is going to cost you around $300. But he is really strong in the early game and he is very powerful as well in the late game. So Minamoto is the only commander so far that I would recommend upgrading if you're willing to spend money on him. The other commander is Ethelflaed and she's literally free, so you'll notice that you will literally max her by just playing the game. So no need to worry about Ethelflaed, she will be used and I will talk about her a little bit later. But once again, free commander and someone that you can consider investing in. So now that we've looked at the earliest stages of commanders, what is going to come next and should you invest in them? Well, the first new commander that you're going to see is going to be Richard I. He is an infantry commander available in the Wheel of Fortune, and quite simply, he is a commander that you should be skipping unless you're a really experienced player. Most players should not be investing in Richard in the early game. He is just not worth your gems in the Wheel of Fortune, and once again, he's not worth your generic legendary commander sculptures. Richard's endgame value is not very high, once again, unless you're a very original player, someone who's been playing the game before and you probably already know all the advice I'm giving you. So if you're new to the game, do not get Richard, he's not worth it, unless your AoE barb farming is the only time I'd even consider getting him, and even then it would be very cheap. So a 5-1-1-1 Richard is a good idea, so maxing the first skill and nothing else. But for most players, Richard is a complete skip commander, and he's not really going to be discussed anymore in today's video. The next commander you get access to is going to be Yi Seong-Gye. He is a commander that will come after Richard in the Wheel of Fortune, probably around a month or so after you'll get access to Yi Seong-Gye, who I'm going to call YSG, and he's the first commander that you can consider investing in, and honestly someone I would recommend investing in. He is available at the first ever KVK for you, which is going to be when you really start to fight other players, and that means YSG is going to get a lot of early game value in your KVKs, especially KVK 1 and KVK 2, where he's arguably one of, if not the best commander in that game mode. Also keep in mind, he's got area of effect damage, which is very nice, and he's just got a lot of overall damage in his kit. So YSG is a very powerful commander and someone that you can consider investing in. And once I mention all the marches that you can build, you'll have to decide whether or not you do choose to invest in him. In my opinion, he is the commander I would expertise, just because you're going to get him at the earliest point, and he is going to have a lot of endgame value as well. So YSG, definitely in my opinion, is a good pickup, and you can definitely expertise him, and it would be good for your account. Is it completely optimal? No, but when it comes to investing in a legendary commander, if you want to do that, YSG is going to be one of the better options. Do keep in mind, in my opinion, I'm putting this one out there, the best thing to do is just to save all of your legendary commander sculptures until you reach the end game, and then you expertise 2 of the best commanders in the game. But usually most people won't do that because you want to be able to play the early game at least. So you're probably going to invest in 1 commander, and I think YSG is a very good candidate if you're not spending money on Minamoto. If you bought Minamoto, don't expertise YSG, it's not worth it. You might as well save those gold threads until you do reach Season of Conquest. After YSG, you're going to get access to a new cavalry commander, and this commander is going to be quite a while after YSG. YSG is going to be in the Wheel of Fortune for probably about a month as well, and then you're going to get access to Saladin and also Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan only available in the Mightiest Governor, ignore him, he's not worth your time. And Saladin is in the same boat. Saladin used to be good, nowadays he's not so good. So if you're looking at Saladin and he's just come into your game and you're thinking, maybe I'll expertise him, the truth is he's just not worth it, and I would completely ignore him, don't even bat an eye at it. That's just because really at the end of the day, Minamoto is quite literally just a better choice, and you will have to spend money to get him. So if you invest in Saladin, it's like getting a almost worst Minamoto once you reach the end game, and then it just makes no sense. So don't get Saladin, he's a waste of your time. Following Saladin, this is when you're going to get access to another commander who is arguably an okay option to invest in, similar to YSG, and that's going to be Alexander the Great and also Constantine. Constantine, not worth your time, ignore him, but Alexander the Great can be worth your time. Once again, when I go into the endgame pairings, Alexander the Great also does have a very good option for the end game, and he is very good in Season 2. So Alexander the Great is a commander you can consider picking up out of the Wheel of Fortune, and also upgrading as well. So Alexander the Great is another option for you. He is probably as powerful as YSG, if not a little bit better in the end game. So Alexander the Great, another great option who you can choose to invest in, which means currently the top 3 commanders you can invest in, not in any order. You've got YSG, you've got Minamoto, and you've also got Alexander the Great as your 3 current options. Now, the final 2 commanders you'll get access to before you get access to every single commander in the game, it's going to be Edward of Woodstock and Tamiris, and I'll keep this sweet and short. Don't even invest in them, don't even look at them, they're both not worth your time, and they're both pretty much useless nowadays. Edward, only good for rallying, so unless you're a big spender, don't bother. Tamiris, completely useless with the release of some of the newer commanders like Hermann Prime. So that is a simple, do not invest in them, they are just not worth your time. So now here's a quick breakdown of what we really discussed, and I'm going to show you which marches you can make with them once you do reach the end game. The tiers I put up, you've got your end game choices. These commanders are the very, very powerful ones you will get access to once you reach Season 3 and Season of Conquest for your KVKs. Other choices are commanders that maybe you have at a good level, maybe you don't, but I didn't recommend investing in. And then the good commanders tab are the commanders which are the ones I recommended investing in, or someone that is very powerful like Mehmed and Ethelfled, who could be used in an endgame march, at least in Season 3. Now I'm going to start off by showing off each endgame possible march by quickly just putting their possible commanders up there, and this is kind of what you're looking at. You're looking at these 3 marches being probably the top 3 in the game, at least currently, and they're just the 3 strongest if we're being fully realistic. But when we completely consider it from an early game perspective, you're not going to really be able to get access to all of these commanders, especially not when you first reach the end game, and you're going to probably have one of these good commanders here. You're either going to have Alex, YSG, Minamoto, Mehmed at some good level, or at least at the bare minimum, you will have Ethelfled. So when we look at these commanders, how would I make some type of a murder ball with them? What marches would I make with them out of the commanders that you do have? And we're going to start off with option 1 for your march, and it's going to be using Liu Che, who is a infantry open field commander, and you're going to put him with Alexander the Great. In my opinion, this is going to be the second strongest option you do have access to, but it is going to be a really powerful march, and if you've invested in Alexander the Great, Liu Che is going to be his best pairing, and this is going to probably be a march that will last you quite a while, at least another 1.5 to 2 years, until some better and stronger commanders do release. So this is your first march option if you invested in Alexander the Great. You can also consider running a Scipio Africanus with Alexander the Great as well, but in my opinion, I want to say that Liu Che is stronger with Alex than Scipio would be. So he is kind of an outdated option, but if for whatever reason you do have him expertise or there's some weird situation, he can work with Alex. But if you have Liu Che, he is a much better commander who is going to trade a lot better. Your other options are going to be if you have YSG or Minamoto, and if you have YSG, you're either going to pick up one of the two commanders, Herman Prime or Zhuge Liang. I probably butchered that. I'm going to say Zhulang. You're either going to pick up Zhulang or you're going to pick up Herman Prime. Any of those two commanders will work with YSG. In my personal opinion, I say you get Herman Prime, just because Herman Prime is going to work better with YSG, purely because of the fact that Herman has got march speed and defense, while Zhulang does not have those two things, and YSG really does need march speed and a little bit of defense to do a lot better. That being said, Zhulang can work a lot better if you're pretty good at playing the game, if you're fairly experienced, and if you know how to fight on the open field. But for newer players, I recommend Herman, since he's a bit more of a user-friendly commander over Zhulang with YSG. In the end, you'll probably run a Zhulang-Herman march, but when you first hit Season of Conquest, I think Herman YSG is one of the better marches, and it can arguably be the strongest, because both of the commanders are dealing an AoE. Now, your third and final type of commander option is going to be your Nevsky with Minamoto. Nevsky is currently the strongest cavalry commander in the game, and Minamoto has a very good amount of single target damage, and also has a good museum relic, just like YSG and Alexander the Great. So Minamoto is going to do really good in Season of Conquest and Season 3, and he is certainly quite a viable option. Now, also do keep in mind, you have access to a few other different commanders which you got access to in the very early game. You got Ethelfled, and you also do have Mehmed. Now, there are some marches you can build out of these. So let's say you're looking to get a really good murder ball. You're trying to make at least 3 very solid marches, and let's say you've got at least access to these top 3 commanders. In my opinion, these will be the first 3 commanders you expertise in the end game. What could you do if you only had one of these commanders? So let's say you only got Alexander the Great, and you've still got to make a march for Herman Prime, or a march for Nevsky. And in my opinion, just put Mehmed with that march, or Ethelfled with that march. Ethelfled is not going to do nearly as good as some of the other commanders, but let's say you were just trying to run 2 marches. So let's say you expertised Alexander the Great, you've got your Liu Che, you're running Liu Che with Alexander the Great, and you've expertised Herman Prime. Who would you use with Herman, since you don't have YSG and your Zhulang is not maxed yet? Well, you use Mehmed. Mehmed is very good at just 5-5-1-1, as long as you do use a museum relic on him. And if you don't have a good Mehmed, even Ethelfled can barely do. She's not amazing, but she can work, and she might be alright in Season 3 or a very early Season of Conquest when you're versing some weaker players. So that can definitely be pretty okay. In my opinion though, Mehmed better pick, and then you could put Ethelfled with that 3rd march if you so needed. In a very good situation, you would have at least 2 of these commanders' expertise. So let's say you maxed Alex and you maxed Minamoto, you can run Nevsky with Minamoto, and then you can use Herman Prime with Mehmed, and Liu Che with Alex. That would be a very good 3-march murder ball while you work on some stronger commanders, such as Zhulang and Joan Prime, who could in theory replace Mehmed and also replace Minamoto. So that's definitely a very good option as well. But in my opinion, when you look at it in just a normal perspective, the most common murder ball I think you would see is any 2 marches, one with a commander from the early game, with a strong endgame commander, and then the same thing in a second situation. You could flip it. Maybe you've got something like this where you put YSG and Herman, and then you've got Leochair with Mehmed, or even just Sepia with Mehmed, which in my opinion would probably do a little bit better. Or you've just got Nevsky Mehmed and Herman YSG. These options can also definitely work. So it really is just a matter of playing around with any of these commanders who I will put in their respective categories. So let's say you were trying to make a murder ball and you wanted to have at least 1 infantry, 1 archer, and 1 cavalry. It's all about messing around with these commanders and trying to see who's going to fit where. So trying to mess around and trying to get each march to have a good commander is the hardest thing, and I think Mehmed is going to be a very key commander because you don't have to spend any gold heads on him. He is only from the gold chest, and then you can put him with any of these commanders and he's going to do really good. So as a good placeholder, I definitely recommend Mehmed, while maybe you've got a few different commanders who are currently in the works or you're running on the open field. So in my opinion, I think that your best option will be investing in YSG or investing in Alexander the Great or investing in Minamoto and then building any one of their top 3 marches. So if you invest in Alex, you get Leochair and you run Leochair Alex. If you invest in YSG, you run a Herman with a YSG. If you invest in Minamoto, you run Nevsky with Minamoto and you're in a very good position. And for whichever commanders you don't invest in, you can just run Mehmed there and he is going to do just as good. Now, if you found today's video at least helpful or even just interesting and you like my perspective on commanders or you're interested to see more about it, I definitely recommend joining my Discord server. There you can ask me any questions about commanders. You can send me screenshots of your account if anything was confusing in today's video, and I'm always happy to answer. So if you have any questions about commander investments or any of the stuff I mentioned today, my Discord will be the best place to join. The link will be in the pinned comment and also in the description. So I do highly recommend joining, and if you don't like it, it is always super easy to leave. So come on down to the Discord. I love chatting with you guys. I love answering your questions, and ask anything you want to ask. Now, I just want to say, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.